And we're finding all of that out, and it's being reported. We're going to save hundreds of billions of dollars. We've already saved a lot. And parts of it are contracts that are expired that we're paying on. Many crazy things that need this. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Everybody here, even this side, appreciates it, I believe. You know, you can see it happening. It shouldn't happen, but you can see it happening. You see a lot of it being put out. But the other thing I think most important for today, I want the cabinet members to keep good people.
Who's really running the government cuts, Elon or Trump? That question was answered when Trump publicly slapped down Musk's authority during a tense cabinet meeting that has Washington buzzing. With over 100,000 federal employees already kicked to the curb, Trump suddenly changed his strategy from "you're fired" to "maybe let's think about this." Cabinet members were practically high-fiving under the table when Trump announced they, not the Tesla billionaire, would have final say on staffing cuts. Is Musk's government influence already fizzling out? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Remember when Elon showed up at CPAC waving a chainsaw around like some kind of government-cutting lumberjack? That bizarre power move got the MAGA crowd all fired up. Who doesn't love watching a billionaire threaten to chop through government agencies like they're overgrown hedges in his backyard? But it looks like Trump just traded in Elon's chainsaw for something a bit more precise, a political scalpel. When Trump first brought Musk into his administration, he basically handed him the keys to the federal government. Elon dominated the first cabinet meeting, strutting around like he owned the place, calling the Department of Government Efficiency a support function that would help agencies trim 15% of their fat.
But they said they're in very bad shape.
You spoke today with your cabinet members and Elon Musk.
I did.
What did you tell them in regards to Elon Musk and his authorities to carry out actions?
In the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of. $60 million for indigenous peoples and Afro-Colombian empowerment in Central America. $60 million. Good people, and the people that aren't doing a good job, that are unreliable, don't show up to work, etc., those people can be cut. So I had a meeting, and I said, I want the cabinet members go first, keep all the people you want, everybody that you need.
The other cabinet members might as well have been background extras in the Elon show. Fast forward to last week, and suddenly Trump's singing a different tune. After Musk's slash and burn approach started causing serious political headaches, Trump took to Truth Social with a message that wasn't exactly subtle. It's very important that we cut levels down to where they should be, but it's also important to keep the best and most productive people. Translation: hey Elon, maybe stop firing everyone with a government badge before we have no one left to run the country. This scalpel not hatchet language isn't just a gentle suggestion, it's Trump putting Musk in his place. When the guy who made "you're fired" his catchphrase tells you to slow down on the firings, you know something's seriously wrong. The numbers don't lie, and they're not looking good for Team Musk. Recent polls show a whopping 71% of young Americans giving a big thumbs down to Doge's work. Even more telling, only 68% of young Republicans approve of Musk's efforts. When you can't get a third of your own party's youth to back your government-slashing crusade, you've got a problem. These aren't just statistics. They're warning signs of a potential voter rebellion brewing. Meanwhile, cabinet members have been sitting through meetings with forced smiles while secretly plotting mutiny. They weren't exactly thrilled when Musk started emailing their employees directly, demanding justifications for their jobs like some kind of corporate overlord. Imagine being a department secretary with decades of public service under your belt, only to have a tech bro with zero government experience telling your staff they need to prove their worth or pack their desks. The tension got so thick you could cut it with one of Elon's chainsaws. Cabinet secretaries, many of whom are former senators and governors, don't take kindly to being bypassed. They're used to being the big shots in charge, not having some Silicon Valley billionaire treating them like middle managers. All this drama couldn't come at a worse time politically. Republican lawmakers in swing districts are getting bombarded at town halls by angry constituents demanding to know why essential services are suddenly on the chopping block. Nothing ruins a congressman's day quite like a room full of angry voters wondering why their veteran benefits are being being efficiencyized out of existence. Trump may talk tough, but he's no dummy when it comes to political survival. The sudden change in strategy reveals he's worried the political costs of Musk's government demolition derby might outweigh any benefits. Firing nameless bureaucrats sounds great in theory until people realize those bureaucrats were actually processing their Medicare claims or making sure their food wasn't poisoned. Behind those forced smiles at cabinet meetings was a powder keg ready to explode. Ever wonder what happens when a tech CEO who's accustomed to firing people with a tweet tries the same approach with veteran politicians who actually run federal departments? Turns out government doesn't work like Twitter, and Musk's mass email demanding employees justify their existence pushed these seasoned Washington players to their breaking point. The straw that broke the camel's back. Musk deciding to bypass every chain of command and blast an email directly to all federal employees demanding they list their accomplishments or basically consider themselves fired. This wasn't some polite suggestion or friendly check-in. This was a "tell me why I shouldn't fire you" ultimatum from a guy who technically doesn't even have the authority to hire or fire government workers. The email created absolute chaos throughout government agencies. Some departments frantically instructed their employees to respond, while others basically told their workers, "You can ignore the billionaire's temper tantrum." Nothing says smooth government operation like nobody knowing whether to listen to their actual boss or the rich guy with the special title. Secretary of State Marco Rubio found himself particularly furious when Musk's Doge team tried to shut down the United States Agency for International Development without even bothering to run it by him first. Imagine being the nation's top diplomat and finding out from someone else that a key part of your department is being axed. That's like your neighbor deciding to remodel your kitchen without telling you. But the real fireworks came during Thursday's cabinet meeting. According to reports, Musk openly criticized Rubio for not firing enough people, suggesting the Secretary of State was only good for television. Talk about awkward office politics. This wasn't some private performance review. This was a billionaire publicly dressing down a cabinet secretary in front of his colleagues. The situation got so tense that Trump himself had to step in like a principal breaking up a schoolyard fight. The president defended Rubio, praising his work as Secretary of State and urging everyone to play nice together. When Donald Trump becomes the voice of reason and decorum in a room, you know things have gone seriously sideways. Rubio wasn't the only one pushing back against Elon's government demolition derby. Veterans Affairs Secretary Doug Collins also stood up to Musk, explaining that maybe, just maybe, mass firings weren't the best approach when it comes to supporting American veterans. Collins advocated for more strategic decision-making rather than just indiscriminately axing staff. The rebellion wasn't limited to the cabinet meeting room. Cabinet secretaries reportedly took their frustrations directly to White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, making it crystal clear they weren't happy with how Doge was operating. These weren't minor complaints about office temperature or cafeteria food. This was a coordinated effort to rein in Musk's unchecked authority. What makes this whole situation so fascinating is that many of these cabinet members are themselves MAGA loyalists handpicked by Trump. They're not deep state holdovers or Democrats in disguise. They're Trump's own team, and even they reached their limit with Musk's methods. The cabinet's united front against Musk didn't just reflect their personal frustrations, it also spoke to growing concerns among Republican lawmakers who've been hearing earfuls from angry constituents about Doge's scorched earth approach. Nothing makes politicians move faster than angry voters, and the backlash to Musk's rapid workforce reductions was setting off alarm bells throughout the GOP. In the end, the cabinet's rebellion worked. Trump publicly declared that department heads, not Elon, would have the final say on staffing decisions. It was a rare public rebuke of his billionaire buddy, and a clear signal that even in Trump world, there are limits to how much authority an unelected tech CEO can wield over the federal government. Trump might have slapped Musk's wrist in the cabinet room, but out in America, a full-blown political disaster was unfolding. Nothing kills the joy of government slashing faster than realizing those lazy bureaucrats you wanted fired are actually treating veterans with PTSD or researching cancer treatments for your mom. The Department of Veterans Affairs suddenly announced they'd be cutting a whopping 15% of their workforce. We're not talking about a few paper pushers here. That's 80,000 actual humans who help veterans every single day. VA. The backlash was immediate and fierce, and for good reason. These weren't just any old jobs being cut. The VA initially planned to cancel 875 contracts, later bringing that number down to 585 when they realized people were freaking out. But the damage was done. Word got out that these contracts included little unimportant things like hospital pharmacy operations, air quality testing, infection prevention in VA hospitals, PTSD treatment centers, even follow-up care for veterans with cancer. You know, you've messed up when Republicans start defending government jobs. Congressman Rich McCormick from Georgia, a Republican who probably has small government tattooed somewhere on his body, publicly suggested that maybe, just maybe, Musk should take a half step back when it comes to cutting services for vulnerable people. Translation: dude, we can't be seen firing people who help veterans. Are you trying to get us all voted out? The town halls across America turned into scenes from a political horror movie for Republicans. Picture this: a GOP congressman standing in front of a room full of angry voters, sweating through his suit as a 70-year-old veteran demands to know why the PTSD treatment center he relies on is shutting down, or a mother asking why cancer research funding is getting slashed when her daughter is in remission. These aren't abstract budget cuts anymore. They're real services that affect real voters. Republicans who were previously cheering "drain the swamp" and "fire them all" suddenly had a change of heart when they realized exactly who was getting fired. Turns out voters don't actually want the government to stop helping veterans or researching diseases. Who knew? The White House phone lines were blowing up with calls from panicked Republican lawmakers. These calls weren't congratulatory. They were desperate pleas from politicians facing furious constituents back home who suddenly realized that maybe not every government employee is a useless waste of taxpayer money. Even people close to Trump started noticing the problem. One source mentioned that Musk's approach seemed callous, particularly when it came to veterans and disabled people losing their jobs. The source suggested that a more precise approach to cuts might be needed. You know, something less fire everyone and more maybe keep the people doing important stuff. The quality of services for veterans was already starting to suffer. With fewer staff processing claims and providing care, the wait times were increasing. Veterans who fought for their country were now fighting for basic services. Not exactly a winning campaign message for 2024. It's one thing to campaign on cutting government waste. It's another thing entirely to actually do it and discover that voters have very different definitions of waste than you might think. Cancer research? Not waste. Veterans healthcare? Not waste. PTSD treatment? Definitely not waste. And just like that, Trump's putting a shorter leash on Elon. The self-proclaimed genius who thought he'd rewrite Washington's rulebook is discovering that political reality bites harder than Twitter trolls. Political analysts are seeing this shift in Trump's tone as a response to the growing backlash and legal scrutiny Doge's chainsaw approach has created. Musk hasn't publicly pushed back against Trump's new scalpel not chainsaw directive. He even called the cabinet meeting very productive in billionaire code for "I just got my wings clipped but can't admit it." The big question hanging over Washington now is whether this is just a temporary PR move or a genuine power shift. The Trump-Musk honeymoon phase is officially over, folks. Turns out even having your own social media platform, space rockets, and electric cars doesn't make you immune to Washington politics. Who knew government was harder to run than Twitter?